All right, hello. Welcome to those of you who are here. My name is Megan, and I'll be presenting our webinar today on using your intuition to work smarter. So I'm a little bit early, and I'm going to give people a chance to join in. You should see a chat box to your right. Can someone just let me know if you're having any trouble hearing me or if you are having trouble seeing the screen? That would be helpful. If I don't hear from anyone, I'll just assume we are good to go. Alrighty, well, let's go ahead and dive in then. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here today. Thank you for being here. I know that there are a lot of other things that you can be doing or paying attention to, so I really appreciate you devoting your attention to this webinar, and I'm excited to share some really good information with you that you can start using today. Oh, Sarah, thank you for letting me know that we're good to go. So before we dive in, just some quick housekeeping items. So this webinar runs on Google Hangouts, and it generally works better if you kind of can limit the demands on your browser by closing other windows or other things you might have open on your computer. Please go ahead and ask questions along the way. So to your right, you should see a Q&A option, which is private and just comes straight to me. And then you should also see the chat box, which is public, which everyone can see. So if you have questions along the way, please let me know. I want this to be more of a conversation. There will be time at the end for questions, but feel free to send them my way as we go. Again, welcome to use the chat box if you'd like. And then you'll also see some polls throughout the next hour. So I have a couple of things that I would love to get your insights on. So when you see those, please go ahead and participate if you can. So for those of you who I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name again is Megan Leatherman, and I'm a career coach and HR consultant based here in Portland, Oregon. That's a picture of me in case we haven't met in person. I focus primarily on working with folks who have kind of lost their sense of what they're meant to do in their career, as well as with HR professionals who are interested in learning new and more authentic ways to support themselves and their employees. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how I got here in a minute, but we'll move on for now. So today we're here to talk about using your intuition, and I'll define that more in a minute, but using your intuition to work smarter. So we'll talk about what your intuition actually is and how you might hear from your intuition. We'll talk about how to tap into it and kind of tap into the wisdom that's there. And then we'll talk about how to use that wisdom in your day-to-day work to work smarter. And by that I mean work in a more sustainable, energizing, humane way. So before I start any workshop or webinar, I always walk folks through a grounding exercise, which you can use anytime, anywhere, to just get still and help tap into your intuitive wisdom. Now, I know this might seem kind of weird to some of you, which is totally okay. The whole topic of this webinar really can feel a little bit foreign to us, but you're here. So obviously something resonated, and your intuition obviously thought you should be here today. So this exercise is only going to take about a minute, and it's just a great way for us to kind of release some of the frenzy that we experience at work and just get grounded before we dive into this topic. And being grounded, and by that I mean being calm and centered, is a pretty fundamental step for connecting with our intuition. And I want to provide a space for you to do that, to experience that, right here in this space. So if you're somewhere private and you're comfortable, go ahead and just kind of settle into your chair wherever you are and close your eyes. If you're not comfortable closing your eyes, if you're somewhere public, you can totally still participate and just rest your gaze on something that's still in front of you. Go ahead and place both feet firmly on the floor and put your hands on your thighs. And just take a deep breath in through your nose. And as you breathe in, feel the oxygen moving through your nose, down your throat, down your chest, into your belly. And as you exhale, feel it moving out in the opposite direction. As you continue to breathe, imagine all of the thoughts that you're having, anything going through your mind or anything that you're concerned about or thought about. Imagine all of those combining into a small ball of light. And this light expands and contracts in your mind as you breathe. And it gently just quiets any anxiety or concerns that you brought into this space with you. And imagine that ball of light about the size of a golf ball, gently moving down from your head into your throat, relaxing your facial muscles along the way. It moves into your chest, your diaphragm, your belly, all the while just releasing any tension or stuckness that's there. The ball moves down to your pelvic floor, and it splits into two balls of light now so that each one moves down through each of your legs. Again, just releasing any tension that's there. And once the balls of light get to your feet, imagine them coming out of the bottom of your feet as these just soft, like little sprouts, roots that move down through the floor, through the offices or rooms below you, all the way to the foundation of the building that you're in. They break through now into the earth, and you can imagine the feeling of just soft, rich soil being dug into as they root in. And take another deep breath in and out, and just feel yourself firmly rooted into the earth, no matter where you are, how high up in a building you might be. And go ahead and open your eyes if they're not already, and just notice how you feel. See if it's any different, from how you felt when you first got onto this call. I think this is a really good exercise to just help us get a little bit centered, and I would encourage you to use this, anytime you're feeling kind of frenetic or or scattered or disorganized. It's a really quick, good way to just kind of root in. All right, so we are ready to kick this off. So intuition, what is it and why does it matter? Let's see. So I was an intuition silencer for about 8 years. I grew up in a pretty religious home, and as I was finishing college, I had what people call a crisis of faith, and I completely separated myself from the beliefs that I had grown up with. And I think whatever your spiritual beliefs are, I think most of us can agree that most traditions include ways of getting still or connecting with others or having a sense of purpose. All of the stuff that we really need if we're going to connect with our own intuition. And I lost all of that in this process. I resisted anything that even felt or smelled remotely spiritual. And while I didn't realize it at the time, I was pretty much soul impoverished. I was totally disconnected from my intuition. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. This is a photo of me during what I'll call the height of my spiritual impoverishment. And this is kind of how my world felt. It felt blurry and confusing and not clear at all. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I had relationships that were unhealthy. I neglected my body's needs. And I was in despair much of the time. And this showed up in my work as well, obviously. I was pretty quick to burn out. I couldn't serve others like I wanted to. I worked in a way that was completely unsustainable and out of alignment with who I am. And I didn't realize this until later, but most of the issues in this period of my life came about because I had no way of connecting with my intuition. I had no spiritual practice, no sense of mindfulness, no belief in what I knew in my core to be true. And as a result, there was an emptiness in most parts of my life, including my career, which I think is a really important aspect of who we are in our own sense of identity. And it wasn't until I started finding ways to tap into my intuition and connect with a larger sense of meaning in my life that things began to change. Slowly but surely, I put the pieces back together. I learned about what worked and didn't work for me. I learned about what I liked or didn't like in my career, in relationships, in where I lived. I drew better boundaries, and I created a practice of tapping into my intuition every day so that it informed my work and it helped me work smarter for the long haul. A spark was kind of lit inside of me at the end of this long, long period that just kind of grew and grew until I sort of came back to myself. There was this sense of just like, oh yeah, this is this is who I am and this is what I know to be true. So that's kind of what I want to share with you today, how to put those pieces back together if you are not already really attuned to your own intuition. And today we'll be talking about it in the context of your work, but really this has applications for your entire life. So I'm really honored to be here sharing this with you today. I believe a lot of us who are burnt out and run dry are feeling that way because we're ignoring this deep sense of renewal, this source of renewal in ourselves. We're ignoring the wisdom that is innate within us, which is what I mean when I say intuition. Sophie Burnham, who wrote a book called The Art of Intuition, defines it as a knowing without knowing. So it's this clear, more kind of body-based sense of yes or no that we can't always explain to others, which I think is part of what makes it hard, right? We can't really rationalize it all of the time or justify it. And research is finally catching up to this idea. Many studies are exploring how this unconscious reasoning can complement our more conscious rational minds. But unfortunately, it's still kind of relegated to the sidelines in most of our lives and organizations. But when we tap into and trust our more right-brained, intuitive selves, we can live with direction, more energy, a stronger sense of who we are and what we're meant to do in our lives and our careers. So what are some kind of high-level ways that we hear our intuition? Your intuition might speak to you in many different ways, and I can't say how it shows up for any one person, but some common ways are through our dreams, which I'll talk about in a minute, through our bodies. So a lot of people describe like a feeling in their gut or a sense of like tension or tightness in their chest. If people, are getting a sense that something is right for them, they might feel like light, or if something's wrong, they may feel like their body's just more heavy. For me, it's this sense of like kind of a rod running through my core. Like I kind of sit up, I feel strong, and I breathe easy when I know that something is a good fit for me. And we also hear our intuition through what I'll call synchronicities, which are kind of seemingly inconsequential, but potentially meaningful coincidences or patterns that emerge. And again, I'll talk about this more in a minute. If you have other ways that you hear your own intuition, I would love to hear them either in Q&A or the chat box. I'm always really interested in learning more about how people connect with their own intuition because it is so subjective. A lot of people ask, how do I know it's my intuition speaking to me versus something else? And at that point, I usually have to talk about the difference between intuitive knowing and ego-based fear. So in Jungian psychology and many other fields of psychology, humans are made up of the ego, the soul, and the self. And I want to talk about the first two in the context of this webinar. So our egos are the parts of us that are trained to survive. They are our survival instinct. They're trained to attach to others, to form our own identity, and assert what we need. Our egos are absolutely necessary for healthy development, but a lot of people are simply stuck in the state of just trying to survive. And you see this a lot in organizations that are focused on like cutthroat competition, places that have high turnover or who have, who lack a cohesive, healthy culture. Our egos are trained to keep us safe no matter what, so they despise change. So if we want to do something that feels scary, our ego will say, no, don't do that because it means you could be socially ostracized or get hurt or lose money. And so again, this isn't a bad thing at all. It's just something that we need to integrate and keep in balance. And the way that we balance that is through our soul. So our soul is the part of us that is connected to a deeper sense of purpose and meaning. Our souls are what compel us to make changes in our lives, to get closer to what actually matters to us. And I would argue that our intuition is the language of our souls, and it's often missing from the conversation that we're having in our workplaces. Intuitive knowing doesn't feel like ego-based fear. So of course, when our intuition is telling us to do something, it can feel really scary, but the texture is very different. So, even if if you feel called to make a change in your career or move or end a relationship, it can feel challenging, but you still have this sense that it's a sure thing, that you are making the right decision. At your core, you kind of feel like this is the right thing to do. But when you're based in kind of the ego fear place, it just feels really like frenetic and scary for the wrong reasons. So to learn a little bit more about how the concept of ego and soul might show up in an organization, I just want to share a quick slide share that I created called 3 Signs That Your Organization is Shackled by Ego. And I'll share the link to this in the chat box in case you're interested. But if you want to learn a little bit more about how this might show up in organizations, that is there for you. We ignore our intuition all the time. We're very good at this in our modern culture and in our workplaces. Just this past week, I was in Philadelphia with my husband, and we needed to return a rental car really quickly so that we could get to this event that we were going to that evening. And it was raining. We're in an unfamiliar city. We're already late to return the car, and we're already late to get to the event that's across town. And I'm driving, and we have to get the car back to the rental place that's located at the airport. So we're using our GPS. We're looking, there's all these ramps and signs. We're using our GPS. We pull into the airport. And to my left, I see a sign that says rental car return. But the GPS says that I should go straight. And so I have a choice, right? And I know in my gut that I should just go left. It seems pretty obvious now, but I don't. I have been so conditioned to trust the GPS instead of my own sense of direction that I go straight. And of course, as soon as I make that choice, I know it's the wrong way. We get lost in like the employee parking lot and circle the airport a couple times and finally return the car like 15 minutes late and get to our event almost an hour late, which was so frustrating. Like I knew I should have just gone left, but I just have learned to trust the GPS more than my own sense of direction. And we do this constantly in our lives. We're conditioned to trust data, trust the opinions of others, trust our fear-based egos more than our own intuition. And it gets us lost. It causes us to loop, to waste time, to work in a way that is simply unsustainable. So I want to talk about how we can kind of stop the madness and connect with our own inner wisdom in a way that complements the data or the external information that we have. So today I want to offer 5 concrete ways to get us started. And again, please feel free to ask questions anytime. So the 5 ways I want to talk about today are to clear away distractions, cultivate stillness, use creativity, pay attention to things around you, and be more aware of your body. So let's talk about each of these individually. I love this quote from Maggie Jackson, who wrote a book called Distracted. She writes, "We are allowing ourselves to be ever more entranced by the unsifted trivia of life. To value a split-focus life is above all to squeeze out potential time and space for reflection, which is the real sword in the stone needed to thrive in a complex, ever-shifting new world." We experience so much external noise today, and knowledge is no longer a finite resource, right? Knowledge is infinite. It's everywhere. What is finite now, what is valuable now in this new world is attention and focus. Think about like all of the emails you receive, the newsletters you get, conferences you go to, or trainings you attend. Information is a beautiful thing. Obviously, I believe that I'm sharing information with you today. But when it's in excess, we can't hear our own internal wisdom. All we get is what other people think, what other people say, data that may or may not be objective. And it causes us to lose our footing. And one really simple way to create space for your intuition is to go on an information diet. So imagine the information you consume as actual food. Ask yourself, is it healthy? Does it enliven you? Does it energize you? If not, don't consume it. You don't have to always do more training or get more information. I bet if you are on this webinar, you are already a professionally accomplished person and you have a lot of the knowledge and information that you already need. So if it is going to be helpful, I would encourage you to clear out your inbox, cancel that training you signed up for, quit trying to get through that book that you hate. Just try to limit the deluge of information that comes at you each day, even if it feels kind of uncomfortable. I know a lot of us feel like we need to just sign up for more and more and more and learn more and read more. But actually, I think we need to kind of pull back and make space for the integration of that knowledge so that it can meld with our own inner knowing, our own intuition, what we believe to be true. through. So that's the first step, to clear out some of the distractions that are around you. The second one is just cultivate stillness. And I love this quote from Sophie Burnham, who wrote The Art of Intuition. She says, you have to be able to have a little bit of solitude, a little bit of silence. In the middle of craziness, you can't recognize intuition above all of the noise of everyday life. And I want to send a quick poll because I'm curious to know how often you are getting at least 30 minutes of quiet time to yourself each week. So on your right, you should see a poll there. And I would love to see what you think. I'll give you a second to do that. It seems pretty across the board. A couple people daily, which is awesome. Yeah, 2 to 3 times a week. Yeah, pretty evenly matched. All right, well, that's great. This is really hard to do, especially, if you have kids or elderly parents that you're caring for. I know this is not easy at all, but it's really important. Your intuition can't really come through very easily if you don't sort of give it some space, some breathing room. Um, Unfortunately, or fortunately, it can't really be willed into submission, which is what a lot of us try to do. It has to really just kind of be given time and space to arise spontaneously. Your unconscious self is really good at making associations and looking at patterns and kind of spontaneously giving you insight. This is like if you've ever been out and about or like in the shower or just going about your day and you have this like stroke of insight that you've been waiting for. It's not something you could have willed yourself to do, through journaling or all of that. There are definitely things you can do to kind of create the right climate for it, but you can't force it. And stillness is a really good way to just kind of let your brain wander, let your unconscious mind and your intuition kind of come through. I will say that if your intuition is silenced again and again, if there is no space for it to speak in your life, your soul is going to get your attention somehow. And sometimes that might have to be through a crisis, like a health issue or a relationship falling apart or the loss of your job. And if something like that comes up, try and I know it's really hard, but try and trust that it's because you needed to know something. You needed to hear from that deeper part of you. And that's not to say that anyone is ever to blame for a crisis, but it can and often is a really powerful opportunity to look deeper into your life. So wherever you are, start small with this one. You can just turn off the radio on your drive, either in or from work. You could take a little extra time when you go out of the office to get coffee, or you could even try to carve out, 15 minutes alone on a Saturday morning to just do nothing. It's really important, and a lot of us are missing this in our lives. So the third tip I'll offer is to be a little bit more creative, to include more creativity in your day-to-day life. Because when we tap into our right brains, the part of our minds that can make free associations and think more deeply about issues, our intuition can come through. And I think this is partly why adult coloring books are all the rage right now. I'm sure you've seen those like at Powell's or other bookshops. These are really popular. I know that for me, some of my best insights have come through when I'm like designing with flowers or taking a walk outside or free writing. It's really important, and we need to make this more of a priority in our workplaces. I think sometimes we think that creativity is just this like kind of silly thing that people do, on team retreats for the first 15 minutes or something, but it is really important. So if you can include more of this in your day personally, or maybe, for your team through doing creative exercises together, during team meetings, this is really important and is a really accessible way for us to hear from that other part of ourselves. The fourth tip I'll offer is to pay attention. So earlier I mentioned that two common ways that our intuition speaks to us is through dreams and synchronicities. And unless we pay attention and can be a little bit more mindful of these two things, I think we miss out on a lot of intuitive wisdom. So I used to believe that dreams were meaningless. As an undergraduate studying psychology, we were taught that dreams are just simply the way that our brains process information after a long day, which may be partly true, but I don't believe that that's the whole truth anymore. The more I pay attention to my dreams and consider how they might apply to my life, the more I realize that there is wisdom there. For example, a while ago, I was wrestling with a business issue, and I had a dream that I was in a home with some very sick people all around me. And I was there waiting for the person that I was supposed to enter into this business arrangement with. And when she arrived, chaos broke out in the home, and I was surrounded by sickness, death, destruction. And when I woke up, I knew what I had been denying. I knew that I had to walk away from this opportunity, that there was no growth there. And in the end, I am really glad that I did. So that's just an example of how our dreams can speak to us, how our intuition can speak to us through our dreams. And what about synchronicities? So again, synchronicities, by that I mean just these kind of coincidences that aren't really coincidences. Like say you're having coffee with a friend and then you see a book that she mentioned in the window, or you had a dream that included a fox in it and then you see prints of foxes everywhere. These associations are often a way that your unconscious reasoning is trying to communicate with your conscious self. In this way, we can kind of try to tap into our more childlike nature. So noticing patterns, getting curious, allowing yourself to just be kind of filled with wonder, or wonder, even if something doesn't seem real or feel real, like just kind of let yourself explore what it might mean. Again, not everything has to be explained or rationalized or justified. I think oftentimes we try and look for the meaning or look for the, direct purpose that we're supposed to apply to something. But it doesn't have to be that way. This is just about kind of playing around. And when you're ready to know what your intuition is trying to say to you, you will know, you'll get it. It doesn't always have to be crystal clear at first. The final tip I want to offer is body awareness. So a really common way that our body or that our intuition speaks to us is through a kind of bodily sense. So someone told me once that the body never lies, which I think is absolutely true. So for you, like think about a current issue you're having at work right now, something that's been troubling you or that is really stressing you out. And when you think about it, just think about real quick, like, how do you feel in your body? Like, is there tension? Do you feel heavy? Is there a tightness? How do you feel in your gut? So get a clear sense of what that feels like. And now think of a time when you felt totally like at peace and ease, maybe like a really special day or on a vacation, or simply a really special time with someone that you love. Now, as you call that thought into being, how do you feel in your body now? How does your gut feel? Do you feel light? Is there still tension? Simply begin to notice and play around with the differences in these feelings. Martha Beck, who is a pretty famous life coach, talks a lot about the body compass. So we can use our body as a compass to figure out if something is the right thing or the wrong thing for us. It's a really common, powerful way to connect with our intuition. And there are no right or wrong signs. What's important is knowing what the signs are for you. That's what matters. So to review real quick, the 5 ways that we can kind of quickly and easily tap into our intuition are to clear away distractions, cultivate stillness, tap into our creativity, pay attention to our dreams and synchronicities, and be more aware of what our body might have to say about a situation. This takes a lot of courage and practice. Your intuition is like a muscle. You have to use it in order for it to be strong. And the hardest part about all of this is not just tapping into your intuition, but then actually listening to it, moving forward. And I think that just takes a lot of bravery and practice. Moving forward without knowing completely what might the outcome be, without having to justify it to others, without needing a 5-point plan about how it's going to improve your life, right? It takes trusting that even though you might not know how something is going to turn out, you trust that your inner sense is smart enough and knows enough to move you in the right direction. I'm sure we can all think of times when we knew our intuition was telling us something and we didn't listen. And I don't know how that ended up for you, but I know that when that's happened in my life, it doesn't generally go well. So again, courage and practice. So I want to talk about using our intuition to work smarter. And before I do that, I want to share another quick poll just to get a sense of, I'm going to type out the poll, sorry, just a second. I'm sharing a poll that you should see to your right, and I want to know, like, is this something you are currently talking about? Do you talk about intuition or feeling at work right now? I would love to hear what your thoughts are. This could come up like supervisors asking, you know, how do you feel instead of what you think, or I don't know if this ever happens, but asking like what your dream life is like, or like what do you get, what sense are you getting about a situation? Okay, so I see all no's. No, no, no. Yeah. Okay, so still, yeah, definitely not something common that we talk about in work, which I think is really unfortunate because I think it's really powerful. So 5 ways that I see our intuition helping us work smarter are through better decision making, creating a stronger sense of culture that is inclusive and holistic, helping us prioritize, helping us with interpersonal issues, which comes up a lot for people. I know a lot of you are in HR or management, and this can be a really powerful way to do that better. And then again, in our own career development. So our intuition has a lot to say, I believe, about what we're here to do on this earth. So first, let's talk about making good decisions. So try as much as you can to just kind of get into the habit of consulting your intuition for decision making. And you can do this by taking the time you need to get still. So maybe that means you ask someone to give you a day to think about it and come back. You know, maybe you're not comfortable saying that you want to meditate on it or draw or, you know, dream about it, but do whatever you need to do to kind of take more space. I think a lot of us feel kind of rushed to make decisions in this very fast-paced culture. And sometimes that means not making very good decisions or decisions that go against what our gut might be telling us. So do whatever you need to do to kind of get still and reflect and just, I guess, honor your intuition in the decision-making process. I believe and have seen that business leaders who do this make much more sustainable decisions. And, you know, again, like it can be hard because we can't always rationalize it or justify it. And that's a work in progress process. So it's something that we have to learn to talk about. But when we make decisions that feel in alignment with who we are at our core, we are going to be much better, much more strategic leaders. The second way is by creating a culture that includes knowledge that is both intuitive-based and data-based. So, you know, maybe you're not comfortable yet saying things like, my intuition is telling me, or, you know, I have this dream about X. But there are terms that we're using in our workplaces like, you know, let's do a gut check, or how do you feel about this? I had a VP of HR that I used to work with who would always ask me how I felt about something, and he would do this with his whole team. We would, of course, talk about like data or the hard facts about a situation, but he would always include like, how do you just feel about this? And he would talk about that for himself too. And he would be really honest, like, I know the data is saying this, but my gut says this. And then we would have a conversation about it. And it really, I think, transformed the way that we worked, because it just made space for a culture of deeper knowing, you know, not a culture totally ruled by intellect, which is very powerful. But again, anyone can manipulate data. Anyone can look at different situations with another perspective. And we need both of those types of knowledge. So people might think this is kind of odd at first, and especially if you're in a position of management, it might feel kind of weird to your team or your peers for you to start including this more. But if this is going to work, if we're going to have workplaces that include this kind of knowledge, it really has to start with us. We have to start modeling it for others. The third way that I think it can be really helpful is when we prioritize. So most of us get pretty strung out when we are unable to prioritize the work that's on our plates. Now, of course, for an organization to function, we need to be able to collaborate with others, but we also have to kind of step up and take responsibility for what is on our desk. And this is something I'll talk about again a little bit in a minute, but a lot of organizations are finding it hard to recruit people who have strong kind of self-leadership skills. And one really easy way that you can kind of stand out above the rest is by taking responsibility and creating a container around your day. A lot of us have gotten into a bad habit of having to constantly ask what our priorities should be. We believe that our supervisors have to tell us, or we're waiting for our peers to give us work to do. And with demands coming from everywhere, I know all of you experience that, we get overwhelmed. So instead of doing that, try letting your intuition guide you as you set up your day. And I would encourage you to do that either the night before or in the morning. Set up what your priorities are for the day, what you feel like is the most important thing, what feels most aligned with who you are and what you're working on. And then instead of just asking your supervisor or whoever you're working with what your priorities should be, formulate a plan and then ask, this is what I think is the top priority or top priorities. Are there any changes you would make? And show up and kind of let your intuition and who you are guide the prioritizing, and then invite comment. I know that we have to collaborate and that's really important, but I think too many people get kind of lost and wait for people to set the priorities for them. And our intuition knows, our deeper sense knows what we need to be working on. The other way that it can be really helpful is in interpersonal issues. So in the most recent HR magazine, there was a piece on how organizations are finding it so difficult to recruit candidates with strong soft skills like decision-making, good judgment, and especially interpersonal and communication skills. I think communication was the top soft skill that they feel is lacking. And I believe this is directly related to our lack of intuitive knowing in the workplace and intuitive training, frankly. So our intuitions can lead us to make better decisions, read a room, help us tap into empathy for our teams, and guide really difficult interpersonal situations and conflicts in the workplace. I think some of you know I have a master's in conflict and dispute resolution, and this is something that we talked about a lot. So the kind of deeper things that are motivating people to be in conflict with one another. And a really good mediator is one who can show up, grounded and centered and able to kind of tap into that empathy and see things from another person's point of view. And I think oftentimes we rely on data or compliance demands or what our lawyers are telling us to do, when your intuitive knowing is a deep source of wisdom for you to navigate these issues interpersonally. So when you kind of employ the 5 steps that we talked about to tap into your intuition, you will show up more centered and more able to effectively relate to those around you. And one great way to do this is, again, by modeling. So if you are dealing with a difficult conversation, try asking the other person how they feel about it, what their gut might be saying about what to do. That can be a great way to kind of break down barriers and move forward. And finally, I think our intuition has a lot to say about our individual career development. If you are constantly burning out or facing crises in your career or are getting physically sick, then it might be time, it might be that your intuition is kind of crying out for a bigger change. So it may be that you try these first 4 things, you try including your intuition in decisions and prioritizing and interpersonal conversations. But if that is just not working, know that part of working smart is really knowing when to push through something and when to just kind of let something end or die off. A lot of times we are socialized to push and push and push and just try harder. But it's really wise, I think, to know when to call it quits, when to step away, when to let something end, and let it end gracefully. So as much as you can, let your intuition guide your career. Involve your left brain and rationality, definitely. We need to do our job searches strategically and write a good resume and do the things that help us move forward. but let your soul take the driver's seat. Let that be in charge, and give yourself the space and the stillness you need to hear your own inner truth in your career, in your professional journey. So just to review again, we talked about your ego versus your soul. So your kind of fear-based decision making versus your intuitive knowing, and how those two things feel differently. Your sense of intuitive knowing should feel peaceful and kind of still and deep, and a strong sense of knowing that something is right. And it may be hard to hear at first, but again, this is a muscle that you will build and that you will get to know more and more. We talked about the 5 ways to tap into your intuition. So clearing away distractions, going on an information diet if you can, cultivating stillness. So giving yourself, at least 15 minutes a day of just time to do nothing. Tapping into your creativity, either in your work life or outside. It doesn't have to be like in a team meeting or in the office, but if you could just make more space for creative exercises. It is not a waste of time. It is not for nothing. It will definitely impact your work life. We talked about paying attention to your dreams and to synchronicities. So just, tapping into that kind of childlike nature that wants to, see patterns emerge and play around and kind of live in that sort of fantasy world. I think that has a lot to say about our day-to-day work. And then again, being more aware of your body. So how does something feel when it is not the right fit? And how does something feel when it is the right fit? And using your body as a kind of compass to help you navigate throughout your career. And then we also talked about 5 ways that your intuition can help you at work. So it really helps with decision making. So making decisions from a place of authenticity and that deeper sense of knowing. This, again, can be really hard in our organizations where we feel like we have to just use our mind and our intellect. But when people show up authentically and confidently, it's like a lightning rod in an organization. It is so powerful and important. We talked about how it can help create a strong culture. So it can help include the wisdom from other people. Again, that person who I worked with in HR who included my intuition, my sense of knowing, really changed the way that we approached HR in our work. And I think it's really important. We talked about using this for prioritizing, so setting up your day before the deluge of priorities come from others, and using your intuition and your sense of where you need to be headed, and prioritizing from a place of groundedness instead of just frenzy and panic. We talked about this helping interpersonally, so again, showing up calm and centered and using your intuition to hear the deeper things that may or may not be said in an interpersonal interaction. And then letting your intuition kind of guide your career, letting it kind of take you in the direction that you want to be headed. So if you would like to go deeper, I want to provide some options for those of you who want to take this a little bit further and who might need some extra support bringing your intuition into your work life. I know that this isn't an easy task. It's not something that was easy for me to learn or get used to, but I'm always really honored to help share what I know about this and how this has transformed my life with other people who are ready to bring this into the workplace. So I'm offering some one-on-one coaching options for those of you whose intuition wants more. And if this just doesn't resonate with you, that is totally okay. Whether you sign up or not, I hope you'll take the principles in this webinar with you today in your work life. And you have already kind of tapped into that, through the grounding exercise that we did. And just by showing up today, you've already started doing this work. But if part of you feels drawn to do something deeper, to learn more about what your intuitive knowing feels like and what it might have to say about your work life and career, I'm offering 3 options until 5 o'clock tomorrow, Friday, April 29th. The first one is just a quick gut check. So if you just feel like it would be helpful to check in with me, either in person or on Skype, we can do that for 60 minutes, and then that includes a written summary, and that's $60. There's the Inner Knowing package, so this includes a free 20-minute setup call just to make sure that it's a good fit for both of us. It includes 3 one-hour sessions as well as written summaries after each session, and that's priced at $165. And then there's what I'm calling the Intuitive Ninja. So this is kind of the deepest level. So again, includes a free 20-minute just check-in call to make sure that this feels like the right fit. I want to learn a little bit more about you and where you're coming from. It includes 5 sessions, either on Skype or the phone or in person at my office in Portland. It includes written summaries for each one, and then it also includes free email support throughout our time together, because I know there are just like quick questions or concerns people are having, and I want to just offer as much help as I can give for people who are in that space. So if you are interested in learning more, you should see a link to your right that includes a link to learn more and schedule and purchase the packages if you're interested. So really important, you can get a full refund if, after our call you decide not to move forward. This is not about like pressured sales or anything. I really want it to feel resonant for both of us. So again, if you're interested, you can click the link to the right. And again, these packages are only available until 5 o'clock tomorrow evening. These aren't something that I normally offer. So go ahead and move forward if you want to. If you have questions, you can always reach out to me. I'll be sending an email after this with a recording of this webinar so that you can listen later. And there will be more information about these packages in there too, if you're interested. So thank you so much for being here. In closing, I want to share a quote that I love from Dr. Pinkola Estes, who wrote a book called Women Who Run with the Wolves. And this is a book I would highly, I can't recommend enough for women and men too, if this speaks to you. But I want to share a quote from her book that I love. And she's talking about how our intuition can kind of expand our options in life, how it can expand our sense of ourselves. And she writes, if you're not vested in the intuitive, you may think you only have one choice, and often that it is an undesirable one. And if you feel that you care about it and submit and force yourself to do it, no, there is a better way. Listen to the inner hearing, the inner seeing, the inner being. Follow it. It knows what to do next. I wish each of you the very, very best as you tap into the inner wisdom that's inside of you. And I hope that you decide and allow yourself to kind of listen more to that intuitive wisdom within you. The world needs it, we need it, and you need that wisdom in your life as well. So thank you again. I'm honored that you showed up today, and I hope to hear from some of you soon.